Hey everybody, welcome back. We are here again with another Kindle sample. We always love having another Kindle sample. I have so many Kindle samples, but as of today I have one fewer. So today our book is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. I know Liu's name. I think he did a book of short stories, which I haven't read yet, but the name stood out to me, so I was looking forward to reading those. But let's take a look. We do judge by covers here. We forget those old aphorisms. I don't care. The cover is really quite lovely. It does kind of harken back to a lot of kind of Chinese art with the sort of the mountains kind of fading into the background and the flowers and things like that. And it's one of those covers where the more you look at it, the more kind of reveals itself. Because at its first image, it just looks like, okay, it's a city on a mountainside and an ocean, but we've got a beautifully ornate carved city. We have these lovely, I think, magnolia blossoms. I'm not great with flowers, but I think magnolias. And we got some ships coming in on the shore. And then you see in the middle here what could have been a bird, but looks like a guy in wings, like a Da Vinci kind of kite man costume. And then way in the back in the sky, you can see in the clouds the shape of a dragon and lightning and cool stuff like that. So that's a lot going on in one cover. Bravo to the cover artist, whoever they may be. I don't know. I'll take a look when I read the sample if that information's available. But yeah, so what am I thinking? I'm thinking a probably Chinese or Chinese inspired story. I'm thinking very kind of fantasy-ish. You know, we've got a castle town or a kingdom or something like that. I don't know. I honestly am not sure. Maybe some crazy inventor who's way ahead of his time inventing flying suits and stuff like that. So let me read the sample and I'll get right back to you, okay? All right, be right back. And we're back. And that was a lot, actually. There's a lot happening in that sample. I don't know who the cover artist is. Usually that's listed on the copyright page, and the copyright page, I guess, is at the end of the book. But when I clicked the link for copyright page, it just took me to the end of the sample. So maybe if I read the whole book, I'll find out who the cover artist is. But anyway, this is interesting. It starts off with something I haven't seen before, which is a suggestion that there is an original or publisher's font option that I should pick. Weird. And once again, a map. We like our maps and our fantasy books. We have a bunch of islands, the islands of Dara, and what we see are sort of one great big main island with what looks like several nations on it, and then a bunch of smaller islands surround it. And that kind of makes sense, because part of this, what we get in this sample, is a history of this world. It is not China. It may be Chinese inspired, I'm not sure, but it's not China. It is definitely a fantasy world. And what you get are these kind of these 7 nations which grew independently. There's a lot of wonderfully florid metaphors for them about how they grew, and they were able sort of as independent nations to kind of keep the balance and keep the peace amongst each other. Sure, there was occasional competition. Sure, there were occasional problems, but like trees growing in the forest, like great trees, they managed to keep a proper distance and allow themselves to grow. Isn't that nice? Until, of course, one of those nations decided it was time to unify everybody, whether they wanted to or not, under an emperor. And the whole sample begins with an imperial procession, and it sounds great. It's illustrated beautifully. Dancers and musicians and elephants, and everyone's there to see the parade, and it's really, really cool. And the emperor is there on his giant sort of pagoda throne that he is travels around in, and kids are playing hooky from school, and it looks really, really cool until somebody tries to kill the emperor. And that's where that guy in the wingsuit comes in, because at the beginning it starts with the image of a white bird kind of flying about in the distance, and the narrative keeps saying that it gets closer and closer and closer. So as a reader, I'm like, what's with this white bird? Is it an omen or something? Is that the kind of thing that it is? Is it going to be a visitor from the gods, a spiritual entity? But no, in fact, what it was a guy in a wingsuit who apparently could throw napalm and tried to use that to kill the emperor. Did not succeed, and it did not end up very well for anybody. But that's kind of how the sample begins, right? With this assassination attempt on the emperor. And it's very well done. It's very kind of dramatic and very the tension is built up by showing us what a wonderful time everybody's having, and then kind of coming back to that bird. And I think that was a really well done sequence. And we meet some of our initial characters. We meet the emperor himself. We meet two boys, Kuni and Rin, who are both 14 years old, and they are that classic archetype of the troublemaker and the thinker, the doer and the thinker, the kid who's probably going to get beaten at school, and the one who is real timid and doesn't want to worry about stuff. So Kuni, of course, is the one who convinced Rin to skip school so they could come watch the procession. Isn't that fun? But of course, then suddenly everything goes wrong. There's an assault on the emperor. There's people shooting arrows everywhere. It becomes a whole big thing. So yeah. And then we meet, from there we go to another set of characters who are descendants of what used to be a royal family in this area until the Great Conquest happened. And one of the boys, this boy named Mata Zindu, and his uncle Finn. And Mata Zindu is also 14 years old, which is interesting. And this kind of breaks what I call the 11-year-old boy rule. I have noticed in a lot of books that I've read where if a child is the protagonist, more often than not, it's going to be an 11-year-old boy. I don't know what this is. Maybe I'll do a special video on this at some point. But for some reason, I've read a lot of books where the main character is an 11-year-old boy. In this case, it's 14. So make of that what you will. But in this case, Mata Zindu is 7.5 feet tall. He is huge. He is stacked. He reminded me a bit of Harrison Bergeron from the old Kurt Vonnegut Jr. story of the same name. And he's got sort of very strange, mystical eyes. And he is, ostensibly, he is the last son of a royal family that was destroyed when this kind of imperial conquest came in. And his uncle has raised him to basically believe that, he will be the one to get revenge for his family who has been taken away from him, who has been taken down. And then it's 7 years later, and Kuni, we go back to Kuni. He is kind of a gangster. He's a swindler. He, drives up a giant bar tab and then convinces the bar owner that he doesn't actually have to pay it. He sneaks his way into parties. He's one of those guys, right? One of those guys who's probably a lot of fun. You would really enjoy having him around. You probably don't want him as a friend because he's going to drag you into his trouble, and you have no idea how he gets away with the stuff that he does. Fun character. I like those because that's not me. That has never been who I am, but I like that. But anyway, Kuni, is going from job to job. He doesn't have any real work until he meets this girl, Jia, who he falls madly in love with and manages to convince to marry him, and then he gets a real job. Isn't that interesting? So, when I say it, it sounds awful, but when you read it, you're like, it's really interesting to see how this girl, Jia, has convinced this guy who's really lives day to day, doesn't really care about the future, doesn't really care what he's going to be in 10 years. And she manages to kind of bring him to earth and put him in a place where he can kind of become a grown-up, which is not bad, I guess. And then we kind of go back to the emperor. He is older, he is ill, and he has a dream of the gods. And we meet the gods of these islands who themselves don't get along very well and who themselves kind of argue and bicker amongst each other. And that's where the sample leaves off. And I don't really know where it's going. I expect it is going to be political turmoil. The book lays out, or the sample lays out, a lot of the history and the geopolitics of this island and this archipelago, of this set of islands, I should say. And how, again, one country decided that it was time to unify all of these other countries, whether they wanted to be unified or not. And the sense that it was better, the narrative at least gives the sense that it was better when they were all their own countries, when they could control their own destiny. There really wasn't any need for someone to come in and take over everything. So I expect the rest of the book might delve into why that happened, and why somebody decided it was necessary. And of course, the ramifications of that, right? We've got like I said, we've got that boy who is the last of a noble line. And naturally, he's going to want revenge. Naturally, he's going to be a problem. We get a sense from the guy on the kite with the napalm, there is already some sort of organized rebellion, right? That there are people who do not want these nations to be unified. They do not want the emperor to be in power, right? Most people don't care. It doesn't interfere with their day-to-day lives. And in fact, the narrative makes a point that when the procession is happening, a lot of the people who are cheering were several years ago running for their lives, or were several years ago when the wars of consolidation were happening, were, in danger and were afraid of what the future would bring. But now they have some measure of peace and stability. So yeah, sure, we'll cheer for the emperor. Why not? And of course, the question of, who the emperor is and what his role is in all of this is still there. And like I said, it ends up with that talking to the gods in a dream. So it does give me a sense that maybe in this world, the gods are real entities. We don't really know if they're real, whether he's dreaming about them, they're coming out of his own head, or whether he's actually in communication with them. So whichever one is true will kind of change the vibe of the whole book. But I like it. I like the characters. I like the dialogue. I do kind of hope that our boy Cooney is going to be shaken out of his, blissful suburban lifestyle that he's got. It's not bad. He has a lovely wife that he loves very much. He has a stable job that's maybe a little bit boring, but he's good at it, right? He doesn't have to go back to being kind of a gangster and a layabout and a con artist, but in my heart of hearts, I kind of hope he does, because he's more fun that way. He's fictional. Doesn't matter. Oh, what? So, that is the book, The Grace of Kings. If you've read this, if you have some thoughts and you would like to talk about them, put them in the comments. If you've read the book, tell me if some of my predictions are on target or way off target. I'm fine either way. And if you have any other thoughts or ideas, or are we all better under one giant imperial unified rule, or should we all just be small little independent countries allowed to grow at our own pace? Go for it. The comment section is open. Of course, do the usual. Do the like, do the subscribe, do all those things, and I guess I will see you here for the next Kindle sample. All right? Stay well, everybody. See you next time.